this day. How good it is, how sweet it is to be together on this day. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Lecha dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 le Shabbat lekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala yalalai 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 le Shabbat lekabela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibor echad. Yanu Eloham Yuchad Adonai Echad Ushmo Echad Hashem Ultiferet Belit Milah. Do it.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome. Come on in, find a seat, grab a siddur as you're walking in, a prayer book, if you don't mind. Welcome to Temple Israel. We're so glad that you're here joining us, and we know that it is a dreary night, so I already had a few people telling me that if it was raining, they would be watching from home. So to everyone who is watching from home, we are glad that you are staying safe and dry and still joining us as well. And for everyone who's here, we're delighted that you could be here with us this evening as we celebrate Shabbat together. We're especially excited because it has been a very long time since we have been able to have Hashemesh here. It has been pre-pandemic, which feels like a very long time ago. So we are so glad to have them all back. And so we're going to begin by welcoming them and welcoming you to our service tonight, singing the words together of Hine Matov.
Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov, yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Hine Matov, yadadai, yadadai, yadadai. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Matov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad.
So it is my pleasure to be able to begin our service tonight with the lighting of the candles and with Kiddush. And so we are going to have Lane Spetner and Lily Doty and Risa Fingerman help us this evening. So if I can invite you all ladies to come on up. And our candle lighting can be found, we'll start with that one, on page 2. Wait, one of you has to light them though. Light. Okay, extra blessing. Beautiful. And if you all want to grab finish up in the hall and come on over here. Amen.
Amen.
Yep. Excuse, you made a face. All right, and we have this beautiful Challah. Helene, will you take the challah over here because everyone wants to see you and hear you. There you go.
Everybody wants to see the challah.
Oh, happy.
Baruch
atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Okay. We give thanks to
God for bread. Our voices rise in song together as our joyful prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
the B'nai Mitzvah, so it's a night of multiple blessings all around. So each Shabbat we come in together and we have different customs for how we should welcome in this special day, but one of the things we do is we think about the idea that there are Shabbat angels who come into our midst, and so we sing the words of Shalom Aleichem, welcoming in these Shabbat angels, and you can find it on page 24.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seichem l'shalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech, Malachei Amlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
We take this opportunity to separate this moment from the rest of the week, this moment from the rest of the day, this moment from the rest of the evening. As we go into Shabbat, we open the doors of blessing. We rise, if we can, together, and we say the words of the Baruch Hu. We sing along the words of the prayer which asks, "Am I awake?" So if you wouldn't mind, please rise with me on page 28, and if you know the words, sing along.
Am I awake? Am I prepared?
Are you listening to my prayer? Can you hear my voice? Can you understand? Am I awake? Am I prepared?
Yalla lai lai lai, yalla lai lai lai,
Yalla lai lai lai, yalla lai lai lai,
yalla lai lai lai, yalla lai lai lai,
yalla lai lai lai, yalla lai lai lai. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, Le'olam va'ed, Le'olam va'ed. Yada dai dai dai, yada dai dai dai, yada dai dai dai, yada dai dai dai,
yalla lai lai lai, yalla lai lai lai, yalla lai lai lai, yalla lai lai lai.
We are entering now into the darkest season of the year. We wake up in the morning and it's dark. We get ready for dinner and it's dark. Somehow it seems that this darkness has just become our whole world. But Judaism tries to remind us that there is something beautiful about when the dark comes, that it doesn't have to be something that we're afraid of. And so when we say the words of Ma'ariv Aravim on page 30, we ask God to help us roll into this dark, to make it not something that scares us, but something that makes us feel a little bit of beauty.
roll into dark, roll into light. Night becomes day, day turns to night.
Roll into dark,
Roll into dark,
roll into light,
roll into
light.
light.
Night becomes day,
Night becomes day,
day becomes night.
day turns to night. Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Please be seated. We continue on 36. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavacha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha uv'lechtecha v'derech uv'shokbecha uv'kumecha uk'shartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu latotafot beinenecha uchtabtam al mezuzot beitecha uv'yisharecha למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
We wander through stories of the creation of the universe, through prayers of our ancestors, and now we come to Egypt and redemption, the shores of the Red Sea. We join together on page 40 as we read the ancient words of our Torah, Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, who is like you, God.
So in a few weeks, too, I think maybe, Rabbi Michael and I are starting a class on Sunday mornings. It's only 2 weeks, so if you want it, you have to come those weeks. But
Wait, it's starting in 2 weeks?
I think it's starting in 2 weeks, and it lasts for 2 weeks.
All right, that's very tall.
I'm pretty sure. It's read it in the Dayline.
You can find it on the website.
But the class is all about figuring out the prayers in the Siddur. Because we know that even for people who have been Jewish their whole lives, or people who this is their first time in a Jewish service, that the prayer book can seem super confusing because it is often different words, even from one synagogue to the next. So if you want to come to the class, we'd love to have you. But I will tell you that one of the things that is remarkable about this Siddur, about this prayer book that we use here, is that when they composed this, they said that it should be like a really great album, and that for every prayer that you find on the right side of the page, that there's always a B side. There's always supposed to be something that is supposed to be an interpretation, maybe not the first thing you listen to or you read, but something that is equally awesome. And so we're going to do the prayer on the B side on page 43. It has the same idea as Hashkivenu, but the words are simple. They say, "Let there be love and understanding among us." We ask God to spread that shelter of peace over us.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu, Hashkivenu, Leshalom, V'hamidenu, Shomeinu Alechaim, Ufros Aleinu, Sukkot Shlomecha. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be a shelter from life's storm.
Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu, Hashkivenu, Leshalom.
There's a great rabbi whose name was the Sfat Emet. And what that means basically is the one who speaks truth. And what he tried to propose is that everyone just try for a little bit to speak honestly, to see how incredibly difficult it actually is. And at this moment, we take our time in the service to recognize that the words and meditations of our heart, the thoughts that we think, the worries that we feel, the concerns that we have, and our deepest felt prayers, it doesn't matter what language they're in, as long as we rise as best we can within ourselves to meet the words that we're trying to say and speak them in a loving language as we walk through life. We join together on page 46 in the Tefillah, and we ask for God as we enter into God's presence.
Please rise.
Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Svatai Tzivta. Na 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 Ufi Yagi Tehilatecha. Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Svatai Tzivta. Na 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 Ufi Yagi Tehilatecha. Na 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 Adonai. Na 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 Svatai Tzivta. Na 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 Ufi Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei HaKol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, U'Mevii Geula Livnei B'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo Ba'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham V'Ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh Kol Atzara L'Hoshia, Mechalkel Chaim B'Chesed, Mechayeh Hakol B'Rachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Ofech Olim, U'Matzir Asurim, U'Mekayem Emunato L'Shenei Afar, Michamocha Bal Gevurot, U'Midor Melech, Melech Memit U'Mechayeh, U'Matzmiach Yeshua, V'Ne'eman Atah L'Chayot HaKol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol.
Please be seated. On page 59.
God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us, so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth, which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks.
Baruch Atah Adonai, Hatov Shimcha U'Lecha Na'el Lahodot. And we join now in a prayer for peace on page 60 with Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Le'olam. Ki Ata Melech Adon L'chol HaShalom. Ki Ata Melech Adon L'chol HaShalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Le'olam. V'tov beinecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael, B'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Le'olam. Tasim Le'olam. Tasim Le'olam.
So at this point in our service, we are flipping all the way forward to page 253. And we take this time to think of those in our community and our families and our circle of friends who are in need of our healing prayers. So if there's someone who you're thinking of this time who is in need of some sort of healing of mind or body or spirit and who would appreciate knowing their names were being shared here, I invite you to offer them at this time. So we're thinking of them. We're thinking too of Arlene Alper. We're thinking of Jerry Krause. We're thinking of Aubrey Craig, and we're thinking of Brian, and we're thinking of Jerry, and of
Ella.
Alice, and of Ella. Yes, thank you, of Ella. We are thinking of you. We know you're home watching. So for all of them, and for all those names we keep in our hearts, we offer a Misha Berach onto page 253, and we hope that healing comes your way soon.
May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Ose shalom bimroma, uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Ose shalom bimrama, uyase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen. Ose shalom bimroma, uyase shalom aleinu,
Shalom
ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imeru amen.
So for those of you who are here with us every week, whether it's in person or watching from home, you know that for the last few weeks we've been talking about Abraham. And we've been talking about what was so amazing about him to make him the first Jew. And we talked about his incredible courage and how his ability to see the good in everyone. And we talked about his sense of hospitality and how he could welcome in strangers and he could talk to angels. And we shared all of these wonderful stories. But tonight, I'm sorry to have to share with you the kind of bad side of Abraham. Because while Abraham did have many traits that made him a wonderful first member of our tribe, he was not so good with human relationships. In fact, honestly, he was kind of a jerk. He did a lot of things when it came to the people who were closest to him that it was like he just could not figure out how to treat them like real people who mattered. And the people who he was the very worst to were the people he should have been the best to, his two sons and their mothers. And so the lesson that I think that we have to try and learn from Abraham is if you spend all of this time being kind of awful to people, is there ever a point where you can redeem yourself, where you can make things better? Okay, so before I get to that story, I'm going to give you the backstory just in case you haven't been listening for the past few weeks. It's okay. I'm only kind of giving you a hard time, but okay. So here's the story. So Abraham, you may remember him. He was married to Sarah, and Abraham and Sarah, they tried to get pregnant for a long time, and they couldn't get pregnant. And so finally, Sarah goes to Abraham. She's like, I have this handmaiden, Hagar, and you could go and have a baby with her, and it would basically be like we had a baby and we would raise him as our own. And Abraham's like, great. So he goes and, yada, yada, yada. She gets pregnant like immediately. And you would think that Sarah would be happy, but actually she's not. She changes her mind after all that. Maybe she didn't think it was going to be that simple. Maybe she just changed her mind when she thought about what this would really be like in her life. And so she says to Abraham, you know what? Changed my mind. I don't want this girl in my house anymore. I don't even want to see her or think about her. Why don't you just kick her out of the house and we'll never have to deal with her again? And Abraham goes, great. And he kicks her out of the house. And by the way, he does this twice. He does this first to Hagar when she's pregnant with her son Ishmael, and then later on in the story, another time when Ishmael's just a little bit boy. Not a very good way to begin a relationship with your first son and with the woman who helped have your child. Now, I realize that in this story, Sarah also sounds like she's not a terribly nice person, and it's true, but unfortunately, Sarah's story ends up getting a lot worse. Because the story that most of us know about Abraham and Sarah is the one that we hear every year on the high holidays, right? When God comes to Abraham and says, I want you to take your son, Isaac, and I want you to take him to the top of this mountain and sacrifice him. And what does Abraham say? Great. Abraham goes and he takes his son to the top of this mountain, and he gets so ready to kill him that he actually has the knife in his hand, and an angel has to come down and be like, whoa, Abraham, enough. Don't do this. No, we read this story every year on the high holidays, and every year it's disturbing. But for me, what I'm always thinking in the back of my head is, while this is happening, where is Sarah? Where is Sarah when her husband Abraham took her son, her only son, Isaac, the one she loved, up to the top of a mountain and tried to kill him? The truth is we never find out what Sarah thought about it, because the very next line in the Torah after this story is how Lily and Caleb's Torah portion begins tomorrow, with her death. And so the Midrash comes and fills in the blanks, but we don't really need a Midrash to help us understand this, that we know that something about realizing that her husband, who just says great to every crazy idea that people come up with, took her only son. She must have been terrified. She must have been so heartbroken that she just died. So now we have Abraham, who has tried to kill both of his sons, who has tried to kill one woman and basically did kill his wife, right? So this is a man who has a lot of relationships that he needs to repair. And so we get to this week's Torah portion. And this week's Torah portion, in many ways, shows us the different ways that one can try to repair a human relationship that is absolutely broken. Now, the first one is his relationship with Hagar. Now, this is a relationship that actually turns out well. Because at the very end of the Parsha, this is the section that Caleb is reading tomorrow, at the very end of the Parsha, Abraham gets married again. And he marries a woman whose name is Keturah. But all the texts tell us that her name wasn't really Keturah. That was actually like a nickname, that really who he goes and marries was Hagar. That after all those years, he went back and he found Hagar again. And he must have in some way said to her that he was sorry, that he forgave her, that he loved her all along. And they get married and they start another family together. And it's particularly beautiful when we know that Hagar is really sort of like the mother of Islam. And so to imagine that both, by the way, in Jewish literature and in Hadith literature, which is kind of like the Midrash of Islam, that they also believe that Abraham goes and reunites with Hagar and that they start all over again. So at least in this one scenario, there is a way of repairing that relationship and making it whole again when you were kind of awful in the first place. With Sarah, though, it's not going to be that easy, because Sarah, of course, is no longer with us. So with Sarah, even though she's gone, Abraham knows that he cannot actually repair that relationship, but he does what he thinks is the next best thing. First of all, he tries to give her the best funeral of all times. Now, does that really make a difference? Well, sometimes it makes you feel a little bit better. He goes and he buys this magnificent place to bury her, the cave of Machpelah, and it's like so big that all of their family for generations will be able to be buried there. And actually the person tries to just give it to him for free or sell it to him for cheap, but Abraham is like, no, this grave, this funeral is so important. I have to do at least right by the way that I lay her to rest, even if I didn't do right by her in life. And then he thinks to himself, what is it that Sarah would have wanted more than anything in the world? Well, what she would have wanted was for her son Isaac to be happy and to find love again. And we know from the text that Isaac was so unhappy after Sarah died. And there's all this midrashim that come and they tell us that when Sarah was alive, that their tents, that they had freshly baked challah, every week, which is kind of funny. They clearly did not have egg bread in the desert, but still, that there's freshly baked challah in the tents, and that the Shabbat candles were always glistening. After Sarah died, the bread never rose. The candles, they could never quite light. But then Abraham goes and finds this perfect bride for his son. He finds Rebecca. In the minute that Rebecca enters into the tent, the Midrash tells us that the challah rises, that suddenly the candles are lit beautifully again. There's actually a really cool story in the Zohar, which is where Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, comes from. And this is good for Halloween, by the way. It says that Sarah's spirit, her ghost, was actually in this tent the entire time. And then finally, when Rebecca walks in, Sarah reveals herself and her image to Isaac. And instead of being afraid, he knows that he's found the right girl because his mother's spirit appeared to him. And so maybe Abraham wasn't totally able to make peace with her, but somehow he was at least able to do in death what he couldn't in life. Last but not least, we have his sons, Isaac and Ishmael. And it's interesting in the text because even though we know that Abraham and Isaac appear to have some sort of relationship, they never speak again. They never speak again in the entire Torah, and he certainly never speaks to Ishmael either. But at the very end of this portion that begins with Sarah's death, we have Abraham's death. And we're told that when Abraham dies, his two boys, Ishmael and Isaac, they come together to bury their father. Now, did they ever make peace with him? Did they ever forgive him? Maybe not. But at least he had taught them enough of what it means to be a good person that they knew they had to come together to at least lay him to rest. So we have these different models of what we can do, of how maybe when relationships are broken, when we have not treated people as we should, that there are ways to redeem them. But the truth is that the only reason that Abraham realizes what a jerk he's been this whole time is when this absolute catastrophe befalls him of his wife dying. So maybe the lesson we take from this should not be, how do we make things better when we are unkind to others? But that maybe, in the beginning, we should treat people like people and be kind all along. Shabbat Shalom. And so we are going to turn now towards the conclusion of our service. And we're on page 282, and I'll ask you, if you will, to please rise, and we're going to join together in the words of the Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא.
On page 287, may we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding. Loved each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech, and may we never lift up our hand but to conquer fear and doubt and despair.
Rise up like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
So we know that this has been a difficult week for our community and for so many of our friends who are watching from home. And so we recall with love the names of those taken from us in recent days, and our hearts go out to their families in sympathy as we recall their names: Barbara Altman, Maxine Gelber, Stanley Hahn, Norma Cohen-Scallett, and Faye Shelby. And we now recall the names of those, the anniversary of whose death occurs on this Shabbat, and whose names have been inscribed in the archives of our congregation or on the Wall of Honor for perpetual memorial: Sophie Berliner Arado, Louis Berkowitz, Robert Berg, Michael Cutter, Pamela Hertz-Dollar, Beatrice Edison, Abram Farber, Ida Pokris Goldberg, Emil Green, Rose Greenberg, Edith Liss Grober, Deborah Grodsky, Jean Hardy, Dora Hykins, Pauline Shukot-Jacks, Gay Beth Katz, Dr. Jack Hayes, Myra Tucholsky-Kopolo, Gladys Miriam Chrisman, Lena Fisher-Ladimski, Kate Ladney, Louis Landau, J. M. Lawton, Eva Shear-Lazaroff, Ralph Scott Limford, Marvin G. Marshall, Dorothy Hartman Meyerson, William Stix Milius, Saul Mogerman, Kevin Moore, Dr. Charles Rederer, David Rickensall, Dr. Marvin Roskin, Dorothy Rosenblatt, Joe Schneiderman, Benjamin Miller Schulein, Shirley Cohn-Schweig, Lottie Sherman, Arthur Silver, Herbert B. Simon, Harry Smith, Dr. Harry M. Sorkin, Dr. Samuel David Sewell Sr., Henrietta Steiner, Dina Rice Stix, Dustin Philip Terwilliger, Jenny Wagner, Myron Wally Waldman, Dr. Stuart Weiss, Aladar Wildman, Lucille Strauss-Wolford, Bernard Yowitz, Dr. Louis G. Zelson. So with these names and the names we keep in our hearts, we join in the Mortar's Kaddish on page 294. Yitzgadal v'yitzgadash shemei Rabbah, ba'alma divrach yirteh v'yamlich malchoteh, b'chayachon u'byomechon u'frei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'bizman kariv emru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'omei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudusha b'richu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, da'amiran ba'oma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mramav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. The source of peace, and peace to all who mourn, and comfort all who are bereaved. And together we say, Amen.
Oseh shalom b'mromav, uya'aseh shalom, aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'yimeru amen.
We're so delighted that everyone could join us this evening. Hashemish, it's so glad to have you back. I sort of forgot how to do this with you here, but it's lovely.
We're going to have to
so
get used to that.
Thank you for being here. So, my friends, we are going to send you out the door with a song for Caleb and Lily Doty. Mazel tov in advance. And tomorrow we know that it's going to be amazing. And for everyone who's here and watching from home, Shabbat Shalom, and we'll see you tomorrow.
שרק יביא. אני נולדתי לשם שרק יבוא. אני נולדתי לשם שרק יגיע. אני רוצה להיות פה.